Good morning and welcome to the Senate Committee on Finance and Assembly Committee on Ways and Means, Subcommittees on General Government. We will go ahead and begin today's meeting with roll call.
Assemblymember Backus.
Present.
Assemblymember Koenig. Assemblymember O'Neill. Assemblymember Torres Fawcett. Assemblymember Watts. Senator Buck. Senator Taylor. Assemblymember Anderson. And Chair Canizaro.
Okay, please mark Senator Taylor absent excused. Please mark Senator Taylor absent excused, and if Assemblymember Koenig manages to join us, then please mark him present as he arrives. Otherwise, we will mark him absent excused as well. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I know this is not ordinarily a place where you would tend to see me in this position, but Senator Don Darrell Loop, the chair of our Senate Committee on Finance, pursuant to Senate Standing Rule number 53, subsection 6, and Senate Finance Committee Rule number 2, has temporarily appointed me as a member of the General Government Joint Subcommittee while we manage some of our senators who hopefully will be joining us again very shortly. But we are beginning our closing process here. Today we have two departments that we are going to begin some budget closings for. We have the Department of Administration, which we will take first, and then we will move on to the Department of Taxation. And so with that, we will begin with the Department of Administration's Hearings and Appeals Division, and I am going to turn it over to staff to walk us through our closing documents.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Damian Meeks, LCB Fiscal Analysis Division. I'll be presenting the closing documents for 12 budgets within the Department of Administration, 2 of which have been previously heard by the subcommittee. The first budget will be for the Hearings and Appeals Division on page 3 of the packet, and this budget account was previously heard on February 12th, 2025. This account has one major issue. The governor recommends an allocation from the Workers' Compensation and Safety Fund totaling $387,804 over the 2025-27 biennium to continue funding one unclassified appeals officer position that was established in fiscal year 2024. The appeals officer position was established to address a sustained increase over the past several years in hearings and appeals workload. According to the agency, this increase is largely due to a rise in industrial injuries and contested workers' compensation claims, trends that are attributed to more individuals returning to work following the COVID-19 pandemic, and an increase in construction activity across the state. At the February 12th budget hearing, the agency testified that each of the 10 existing appeals officers manage approximately 1,000 to 1,400 cases, varying in complexity and time commitment. The addition of the appeals officer position in fiscal year 2024 has helped prevent a backlog and maintain timely processing of cases. The agency confirmed it remains in compliance with statutory deadlines for scheduling hearings within 30 days and appeals within 60 days, and the agency indicates that continued funding for this position would allow them to continue managing the existing caseload and provide flexibility to responding to future increases. And so on page 5 is the decision for the subcommittee. Does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of an allocation from the Workers' Compensation and Safety Fund totaling $387,804 over the 2025-27 biennium to continue funding one unclassified appeals officer position as recommended by the governor?
Thank you so much. And so committee members, we do have that decision for the Workers' Compensation and Safety Fund totaling $387,804 over the biennium to continue that funding. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I have a motion from Assemblymember Anderson and a second from Assemblymember Backus. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion is approved unanimously. We'll move on to the next item.
Damian Meeks for the record. On the bottom of page 5, there are 9 other closing items. Fiscal staff recommends the other closing items be closed as recommended by the governor and requests authority for staff to make technical adjustments as necessary.
Okay, and so we have the other closing items and technical adjustments. Do I have a motion to approve? I'll do a motion from Assemblymember Anderson. I have a second from Senator Buck. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we will move on then to the Department of Administration Merit Award Board. Ms. Meeks, when you're ready.
For the record, Damian Meeks, LCB Fiscal Analysis Division. The next budget account is the Department of Administration Merit Award Board, begins on page 7. This budget account was previously heard on February 12th, 2025. This account has one major issue. The governor's recommended budget does not include funding for the Merit Award Board account for the 2025-27 biennium. The Merit Award program was established to recognize state employees for cost-saving or efficiency-enhancing suggestions. Assembly Bill 239 of the 82nd Legislative Session appropriated general funds of $3,000 for administrative costs and $25,000 for awards over the 2023-25 biennium. There were no expenditures in fiscal year 24, and one award of $700 has been issued in 2025. The agency indicates leadership changes have prevented regular board meetings over the past several years. However, under current leadership, the board has resumed activity and has held 4 meetings as of February 9th. Although the program remains active and codified in statute, the agency indicated that continued funding was not recommended over the 2025-27 biennium due to budget constraints and prioritization of other funding needs, and there are no current plans to repeal the statute. And so on the bottom of page 8 is the decision for the subcommittee. Does the subcommittee wish to recommend approving the governor's recommendation not to continue funding the Merit Award program over the 2025-27 biennium?
Okay, thank you, Ms. Meeks, for walking us through this particular item. I do think there might be some room for a discussion on this particular issue. I know that there have been prior conversations with the Sunset Subcommittee and certainly last session about this particular account. I know it's not accounted for in GovRec for that $3,000, but I'll turn it over to Assemblymember Backus, please.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And this is something that I remember from the last session wherein the subcommittee had studied this committee during I guess it would be we're in 23, 24 interim, or before the 23 session. So I guess that would be the 21 to 23 interim session, looking at this merit award to discontinue this program. And they had made a recommendation that it needed funding because historically it had not been funded. And so they put in a $3,000 award last session, and I understand that the board finally got together and was able to award one employee $750. And I think this, even though at a time where we're cutting the $3,000 that was awarded last year, I think last session was reasonable, given an encouragement right now if we're to make any budgetary cuts, that to reward employees who are working hard to look at measures to cut back to save the state money. So my stomach is I support an award. Just think it could be very helpful. And I remember at the hearing, I thought people were talking about also other employees had submitted ideas that they had not yet approved. So that was just kind of my 2 cents.
Okay. And I know there was a bill last session, I think, that then included this $3,000, and I know this subcommittee has had some discussions on this. I don't know if anybody else had any other comments, or I think I see Assemblymember O'Neill. So we'll go to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to somewhat echo and expand. We need to appreciate our employees. I think what actually, the reason why it isn't, some of the expenses or the utilization wasn't there is we're not advertising it. The directors and falling down or letting it sort of trickle down to the supervisors, we need to promote it more. And we need to recognize, because when I had issues in my division, I went to those that did the work for a lot of the solutions to why things weren't moving as quickly or as well as we could. And we just need to appreciate our employees. So I would promote and suggest that we go ahead and fund this at least to its previous levels.
Okay, thank you. And I think Assemblymember Backus, you had an additional comment.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I just realized when looking at this, the 3,000 just only funds the work that is being done to consider merit awards. I know last session we did 25,000, and maybe that's what seems a little steep for our budget. I mean, I would suggest at minimum doing like a $5,000 account to do the merit award. I mean, we did have at least one employee that did the got the $750, but I remember there were other employees in the stock, but we do need to account for also the 3,000. So I'm open to any other suggestions, but at minimum, if we do the 3,000, we do still need to put some money aside for the merit award as well.
Okay. I think the pleasure of the subcommittee then would be to not go with governor's recommendation to not continue the funding, to add that $3,000 as to match what was done in the last legislative session, to continue that merit account.
Chair, would you be willing to take that motion as to what you just stated?
I would be willing to take a motion.
So moved then of having that $3,000 put back in.
Great. Then we have a motion from Assemblymember Anderson. I have a second from Assemblymember O'Neill. Any further discussion on that motion? Assemblymember Backus.
Sorry about that. I was writing some numbers. I just want to make sure that the motion included the $3,000 administration plus the $5,000 to set aside for a merit award.
Yes, I think we can make sure that that motion is inclusive of both.
Chair, do you need me to restate that?
Yes, if you would like.
Okay, not a problem. So I'd like to rescind my prior motion and instead state the $3,000 for reinstating what we currently have, and then an additional $5,000 for actual awarding of those merit items.
Great. And so I have a revised motion from Assemblymember Anderson, a second from Assemblymember O'Neill. And a rescission of the second from Assemblymember O'Neill. Okay. And a new second from Assemblymember O'Neill for the revised motion. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. 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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously, and we will be restoring that amount for the merit award. Okay, Ms. Meeks, I'll turn it over to you. The next one is Administration, Juvenile, and Family Court Judges. So members of the committee, I was getting a little ahead of myself here for the juvenile and family court judges. We are actually going to do the other pieces here that we do not have additional large discussion items on, and for which there have been staff closings. Ms. Meeks will go through all of those. We will then take a moment to ask if there are any questions or concerns or comments from members of the committee. And then my intention is to take a motion on all of those additional accounts. So I will turn it back over to you, Ms. Meeks.
Damian Meeks for the record. I'll now begin presenting the budgets for which the subcommittee has not previously reviewed for the Department of Administration, for which fiscal staff is responsible for developing the closing recommendations. And I will pause following my presentation of each budget to allow for questions. And when I've presented the last budget in this group and questions have been addressed, the chair may wish to ask for a single motion for the closing consideration of all budgets for which fiscal staff is responsible for developing the recommendations, which is noted on page 33 of the packet. So the first budget is for the Juvenile and Family Court judges on page 11 of your packet. This budget has no major closing items, and there are no other closing items for this budget. Are there any questions?
Any questions, concerns, comments? All right, seeing none. We'll keep moving.
Damian Meeks for the record. The next budget on page 13 for the Department of Administration is the Director's Office, and there are no major issues. There are 3 other closing items with 1 technical adjustment for other item number 3.
Any additional questions or comments from members of the committee? Okay, seeing none. We will Okay, we will keep moving then on through to mail services.
Okay, page 15 of the packet is the Mail Services budget. The Mail Services Division provides internal mail services to participating state and local government agencies. There are no major closing issues. There are 3 other closing items, including 1 technical adjustment for other closing item number 3.
Do we have any questions from the committee? Seeing none, we will move on to mail services equipment.
On page 17 is the Mail Services Equipment budget. This account funds the replacement equipment for Mail Services Division and is funded with transfers from that budget. There are no major closing issues and no other closing items.
Questions from the committee? All right, seeing none, we will keep moving to purchasing.
On page 19 is the budget for the Purchasing Division. The Purchasing Division's primary responsibility is to assist state agencies and political subdivisions with the efficient procurement of supplies, equipment, and services at a reasonable cost. There are no major issues, and there are 5 other closing items, with other closing items 4 and 5 being technical adjustments.
Questions from the committee? Okay, we will move to the Federal Surplus Property Program.
On page 23 is the Federal Surplus Property Program. This program provides state and municipal government agencies access to federal surplus property. There are no major issues and no other closing items.
I'm not seeing anybody jump up for questions, so we will keep moving to Archives and Public Records.
Okay, on page 25 is the Nevada State Library Archives and Public Records Division budget. The division administers programs for the creation, maintenance, retention, preservation, and disposition of records for the executive branch. There are no major closing issues, and there are 2 other closing items.
I'm not seeing any questions, so we will keep on moving.
The next budget, on page 27, is the Nevada State Library and Archives Imaging and Preservation Services Program. The account funds equipment and software replacement for the Imaging and Preservation Services Program. There are no major closing issues and no other closing items.
Not seeing any questions from the committee. We will go on to the State Library.
On page 29 is the Nevada State Library and Archives State Library budget. The budget provides a range of information services to state agencies, public libraries, the general public, including reference research and support services, as well as services designed for people with disabilities. There are no major closing issues, and there are no other closing items.
Questions from the committee? Okay, we will go on to the Library Cooperative.
Okay, and finally, on page 31 is the Nevada State Library and Archives Library Cooperative budget. The Nevada Cooperative Libraries plans, develops, shares, operates, and maintains services for the management of automated library functions for the public and provides advanced library and technological services statewide. There are no major closing issues and no other closing items.
Okay, questions? Not seeing any. I will turn it back over to Ms. Meeks for the summary for our closing recommendations.
As previously noted, fiscal staff is responsible for developing the closing recommendations for the following budget accounts. To assist with the closing, fiscal staff has identified the budget accounts that are recommended to be closed as recommended by the governor, along with identified technical adjustments that are recommended below. Fiscal staff recommends that the following budget accounts be closed as recommended by the governor with the technical adjustments noted, and requests authority for staff to make other technical adjustments as necessary. 101-1302 Administration, Juvenile and Family Court Judges. 101-1337 Administration, Director's Office, including the technical adjustments to the base budget as noted in other closing item 3 to decrease cost allocation revenues to $1 million in fiscal year 2026 and $998,431 in fiscal year 2027. Increase general fund appropriations to $46,694 in fiscal year 2026 and $46,417 in fiscal year 2027, and reflect reserves of $81,425 in fiscal year 2026 and $83,066 in fiscal year 2027. 713-1346 Administration Mail Services, including the technical adjustment to the base budget as noted in other closing item 3 to increase fee revenues to $11.7 million in each year of the 2025-27 biennium to reflect a reserve of $1.2 million in fiscal year 2026 and $1.7 million in fiscal year 2027, and decrease the beginning balance forward by $706,387 in fiscal year 2026. 713-1347 Administration Mail Services Equipment. 718-1358 Administration Purchasing, including the technical adjustment to the base budget to increase fee and rebate revenues to $3.3 million in each year of the 2025-27 biennium, decrease the beginning balance forward by $359,103 in fiscal year 2026, and increase lease expenditures to $219,026 in each year of the 2025-27 biennium based on the current lease agreement. 718-1367 Administration Federal Surplus Property Program. 101-1052 Administration, NSLA Archives and Public Records. 101-1053 Administration, NSLA IPS Equipment Software. 101-2891 Administration, NSLA State Library, and 101-2895 Administration, NSLA Library Cooperative.
Okay. Members of the committee, you have heard the recommendation summary. Any discussion on that item before we seek a motion? I'm not seeing any. So do we have a motion to approve the staff recommendations for those budget accounts as just noted by Ms. Meeks and indicated on page 33 of your highlights?
So moved.
I have a motion from Assemblymember Anderson. I have a second from Assemblymember Backus. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much, Ms. Meeks, for all of your help today in walking us through those budget accounts and all of your work on that, and to our fiscal staff as well. We are going to take just a short recess to get ready for our Department of Taxation. So give us just a moment. Okay, we are going to call the Subcommittee on the Joint Subcommittee of Assembly Ways and Means, Senate Finance, Joint Subcommittee on General Government, back to order. We are ready to begin with the Department of Taxation. And so we will begin with the Unified Tax System Replacement, Decision E499.
Thank you, Nancy Morris, Fiscal Analysis Division, for the Department of Taxation Budget Account 2361. As the chair stated, the first major closing issue is the Unified Tax System Replacement. The governor recommends the removal of $43 million in Federal American Rescue Plan Act coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds, which were authorized, expended, and projected to be expended in the 23-25 biennium to implement the Modernize Your Nevada Tax Project, or Project Mint, to replace the department's unified tax system. Included in the elimination is the elimination of 3 positions currently funded with ARPA and supporting the project. And the governor recommends one-time funding to continue the project inclusive of the 3 positions in the 25-27 biennium. As background, the project started when money was appropriated from the 2019 legislature for a needs assessment and has continued, and as shown on the table on the top of page 37, the projected expenditure for the total project is $75.5 million. As noted, the governor recommends one-time funding to continue the project totaling $32.7 million as a combination of general fund appropriations of $29.6 million and the utilization of $3.1 million of previously authorized ARPA funds. And the agency's projected expenditures for Project Mint in the 25-27 biennium indicate funding of $35.8 million would be required, which is $3.1 million more than the funding included in the recommended one-time appropriation. As for the status of the project, it's rolling out in 3 phases as shown on the chart on page 37, the first phase of which rolled out in December of 2024. Previously, 4 positions for Project Mint were funded with ARPA funds, and one of the 4 positions has changed and is now funded with general fund appropriations in the base budget. Fiscal staff is bringing this change of funding for the subcommittee's consideration, along with the recommended elimination of the 3 ARPA-funded positions in Decision Unit E499. As noted, the governor recommends one-time funding totaling $32.7 million in the 25-27 biennium, which is $3.1 million less than the agency's projected expenditure. The agency indicates that it has identified $3.1 million in contractor expenses that could be eliminated in the 25-27 biennium, but that would increase project risks. As an alternative, the money committees may consider allocating additional funding to this one-time appropriation when it's considered during the bill hearing. The agency is anticipated to have $3.1 million of the $42.7 million in authorized ARPA funds for the current biennium remaining at the end of fiscal 25, which is recommended to be eliminated in the E499 decision unit and reauthorized in the governor's recommended one-time funding. However, to provide transparency for budgeting in the 25-27 biennium, the subcommittee may wish to recommend reducing the reduction in decision unit E499 in fiscal 26 by $3.1 million, and instead budgeting the $3.1 million in authorized ARPA funds in the agency's budget in fiscal 26. With the adjustment, the reduction in ARPA funds in fiscal 26 would be $18.4 million instead of the $21.5 million in the governor's recommendation. In addition, the 2023 Money Committees issued a letter of intent to report on the project every quarter. The subcommittee may wish to recommend issuing a letter of intent for reporting every 6 months on the project over the 2025-27 biennium. The decision for the subcommittee on page 39. Does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of reductions in ARPA fund authority as recommended by the governor, with the noted adjustment to authorize ARPA funds of $3.1 million in fiscal year 2026 and remove the remaining budget authority of $18.4 million in fiscal '26 and $21.5 million in fiscal '27, and change the funding for one position in the base budget from ARPA funds to general fund appropriations.
Okay, members of the subcommittee, you have heard the decision point for us today. I would say that we should consider additionally including, or at least it would be my preference to include, along with that, the ongoing reporting with the letter of intent, with the same pieces that we have been receiving regular information on, and to include that letter of intent with the decision that we may make here, so that we can continue to get those updates on the Mint project.
Chair, if I may, thank you so much. So I do think that we should have a letter. I've got a motion ready to go for the letter of intent that will kind of go with that monitoring. What I'm wondering though is, I know that there's been some discussion, do we continue to use that ARPA money to continue this work, especially when it comes to the agency budget? And my feeling is we should continue to do some of that work, but also we've got to make sure that we're being smart when it comes to the project Mint and how that's working. So it's just kind of a little comment just to add into it before we actually do the motion.
Great, thank you. Any additional discussion on this item? Okay, so then I will turn it over to you, Assembly Member Anderson.
Thank you so much. So first, I'd like to make a motion to basically recommend approval of reductions in ARPA fund authority as recommended by the governor with the noted adjustments to authorize ARPA funds of $3.1 million in fiscal year 2026 and remove the remaining budget authority of $18.4 million in fiscal year 2026 and $21.5 million in fiscal year 2027, and also change that funding for one position in the base budget from ARPA funds to general fund appropriations, as well as to continue to monitor the I would like to recommend issue a letter of intent to receive updates every 6 months on the project, which would include the following information: an update on the replacement of the Unified Tax System implementation plan and projected timelines, an overview of the activities of the Unified Tax System position, contract positions and project vendors, a list of the project deliverables received, deliverables anticipated for the next reporting period, and deliverables that are behind schedule, and finally, a summary of categorical expenditures incurred to date on project implementation and cost projections for the remainder of the project implementation.
Okay, you all have heard the motion from Assembly Member Anderson. Do I have a second on that motion? I have a second from Assembly Member Backus. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. The motion carries unanimously, and we move on to the next item, which is E815.
Nancy Morris, Fiscal Analysis Division. The second major item is 2 new general counsel positions. The governor recommends general fund appropriations of $127,058 in fiscal year 26 and $492,817 in fiscal year 2027 to add 2 new unclassified general counsel positions. The agency indicates the 4 deputy attorney general positions assigned to the department from the Office of the Attorney General are not sufficient for the agency's needs. To provide sufficient staffing, the governor recommends the 2 positions, one of which would serve as conflict counsel to represent the Nevada Tax Commission in contested matters, and the other position would assist with regular daily requests for legal advice. In addition, the governor's recommended budget in the administrative budget account for the Attorney General's office includes the addition of 1 new senior deputy attorney general position to support the Department of Taxation. During the budget hearing on February 6, 2025, the agency indicated the Attorney General's office was aware of the department's need, and further discussions between the 2 agencies were needed. A bill draft request was submitted to enable the agency to be able to add legal positions, which would allow the director to employ or retain legal counsel for the Tax Commission or the Department of Taxation, which would be needed to add the 2 positions in the Department of Taxation budget. On March 19th, 2025, the agency indicated that as a result of talks with the Attorney General's office, the Attorney General's office had agreed to increase the requested new Senior Deputy Attorney General positions from 1 to 3 in the Attorney General's budget, and the agency indicated as a result, the Department of Taxation would no longer need the 2 general counsel positions included in the executive budget. Budget Amendment A257612361 to remove the 2 general counsel positions in this decision unit was submitted and would instead add transfers of $182,798 in fiscal 26 and $413,480 in fiscal year 2027 to the Attorney General's office to support the 2 additional Senior Deputy Attorney General positions in the Attorney General's office administrative budget account. As a result, the bill draft request to provide the director the statutory authority to employ legal counsel has been withdrawn. For the 2025-27 biennium, the proposed transfers to the Attorney General's office total $596,278, which is $23,597 less than the $619,875 originally recommended to add the 2 positions in the Department of Taxation's budget. Approval of the budget amendment would be contingent upon the approval of corresponding action in the Attorney General's office administrative budget account to add 2 additional Senior Deputy Attorney General positions dedicated to the Department of Taxation. The 2 decision options for the subcommittee on page 42. The first option is, does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of Decision Unit E815 as recommended by the governor, with a technical adjustment to remove 1 position from the fiscal year 26 FTE count to fund 2 new unclassified general counsel positions in the Department of Taxation budget account funded with general fund appropriations of $125,912 in fiscal 26 and $492,817 in fiscal year 2027, and recommend the drafting of enabling legislation upon which this decision unit would be contingent? Or does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of Budget Amendment A257612361 to add general fund appropriations of $182,798 in fiscal year 26 and $413,480 in fiscal year 2027 for transfers to the Attorney General's office administrative budget account to support 2 new Senior Deputy Attorney General positions dedicated to the Department of Taxation, contingent upon approval of corresponding actions when closing the Attorney General's office administrative budget account. And decisions pertaining to unclassified salaries will be determined by the money committees when the pay bill is considered. Staff requests authority to make any technical adjustments subsequently required.
Okay, members of the subcommittee, we do have a decision point here on page 42. We also heard sort of this request on the additional attorneys' positions within the Department of Taxation during the pre-session full budget hearings as well, if I am remembering correctly. And so I think my preference would be to approve the budget amendment. I think those positions properly belong with the Attorney General's office, and obviously understanding that the department needs some additional assistance in being able to do all the things that they do. And so I think putting those additional positions to assist with the Department of Taxation within the Attorney General's office seems to make sense to me. But I don't know if there's any further discussion from members of the subcommittee on that. Okay, then I will turn it over to Assemblymember Anderson for a motion.
Thank you so much, Chair. I think I'd like to make a motion to approve the second option as stated by staff.
Okay, I have a motion from Assemblymember Anderson. I have a second from Assemblymember Torres Fawcett. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Ms. Morris, we'll turn it back over to you for E681.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Major closing issue number 3 is a new tax manager position in Decision Unit E681. The governor recommends general fund appropriations of $91,296 in fiscal year 26 and $120,606 in fiscal year 27 to add one new tax manager position. The agency indicates the revenue section of the department consists of one tax manager and 130 positions, and the agency is intending to split the section into two, so each tax manager, including the existing tax manager and the new position, would supervise roughly half of the 130 staff. One would oversee collections, advocacy, enforcement, and education, and the other manager would assist taxpayers with questions, registrations, and filing returns. The decision for the subcommittee on page 43. Does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of the governor's recommendation for one new tax manager position and associated operating costs funded with general fund appropriations of $91,296 in fiscal year 26 and $120,606 in fiscal year 2027?
Okay, members of the subcommittee, there is the decision to recommend approval of that recommendation for a new tax manager position. Any discussion on this particular issue? Seeing none, I would accept a motion from Assemblymember Anderson and a second from Assemblymember Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Ms. Morris, we'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Closing item, major closing issue number 4 is 2 new training officer positions. The governor recommends general fund appropriations of $52,606 in fiscal year 26 and $199,526 in fiscal year 27 to add 2 new training officer positions. One position would be located in northern Nevada and one in southern Nevada. The agency currently relies on multiple sources for training staff, and the 2 new positions would develop a comprehensive training program to improve the department's operational efficiency and build a skilled and knowledgeable workforce. The agency indicates that right now most training is provided by supervisors, and due to staff turnover, supervisors are spending time training new staff instead of performing normal duties, and the 2 new positions would allow for consistent statewide training manuals. The decision for the subcommittees on page 44. Does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of the governor's recommendation for 2 new training officer positions and associated operating costs, inclusive of a noted technical adjustment to remove 1 position from the fiscal year 26 FTE count, funded with general fund appropriations of $51,352 in fiscal 26 and $199,526 in fiscal year 2027?
Okay, members of the subcommittee, any discussion on this particular issue? We have before us the recommendation to approve 2 new training officer positions and operating costs. Seeing none, I would accept a motion to approve as just detailed by staff. I have a motion from Assemblymember Anderson. I have a second from Assemblymember Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. We will move on to the next couple of items for travel and training.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Major closing issue number 5 is increased funding for travel and training through 3 separate decision units, E226, 229, and E230. The governor recommends general fund appropriations totaling $431,661 over the 2025-27 biennium for increased travel and training expenses for the department. The first decision unit, E226, recommends general fund appropriations of $30,400 over the 2025-27 biennium for attendance by 1 or 2 staff at each of 5 training events each fiscal year. The agency indicates this training is necessary to stay current regarding the Tobacco Master Settlement Agreement. The agency and Governor's Finance Office concur that this decision unit should be funded with tobacco license fees instead of the general fund appropriations as recommended by the governor. In response to follow-up questions, the agency indicates that of the 5 events included in the recommendation, attendance at 2 events would no longer be necessary because the training would be provided at other conferences. Due to this reduction in events, $5,300 each year would no longer be needed. With the noted reduction, the revised funding in this decision unit would be $9,900 each year, or $19,800 over the 25-27 biennium. As previously indicated, the agency and Governor's Finance Office indicate this should be funded with tobacco license fees instead of the general fund appropriations, so fiscal staff would recommend technical adjustments to replace the general fund appropriations in this decision unit with tobacco license fees and to reduce the total amount of funding in this decision unit from $30,400 to $19,800 over the 25-27 biennium. The decision unit for the subcommittee on page 45. Does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of the governor's recommendation in decision unit E226 for tobacco license fees of $9,900 in each year of the 25-27 biennium for attendance at 3 Federation of Tax Administrators training events each fiscal year, which include technical adjustments to change the revenue source from general fund to tobacco license fees and reduces the number of events attended by 2.
Okay. And there are a couple of accounts here that we've been discussing with respect to travel and training. The first is this E226 decision unit. And then I know there's some additional discussion on E229 and 230 that we will have just over some of the concerns with the significant increase here. I am going to turn it over to Assemblymember Backus to discuss some of the, I think, ongoing conversations with the committee regarding E226 first. So, Assemblymember Backus.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And I think I'm just going to preface this with a lot of our agencies have been making significant requests for travel, which would probably be great in a good time. Unfortunately, we're now in a situation where we're looking at where we can cut. And so this isn't, I feel bad because Department of Tax is our first one up on this item, but we're digging in to see how we can best use the state funds because we are looking at ways to cut back on the general fund. Ironically, the first one we're going to start with, the recommendation is going to be, we're going to seek to get it funded through the tobacco funds, but because there's no mandatory requirement under the MSA that we attend so many events, but it's still important to secure some training, not looking at the amendment and taking 1/5 of the original ask. My motion on E226 would be to fund training for related related training at $6,080 under enhancement 226 and change the revenue source from general funds to the fees collected from the tobacco, I guess they're the tobacco license fees for E226. And then, Chair, I'll be happy to address the other ones as we move through.
Okay, so I have a motion from Assemblymember Backus for E226. I have a second from Assemblymember Anderson. Discussion on this particular motion. Okay, seeing none. Oh. Let me get just a little bit of clarification on the motion from Assemblymember Backus regarding whether this is the biennium or the year.
Absolutely. It would be over the biennium because the original general funds request was $30,400 for the multiple events over the 2025-27 biennium. And so dividing that by 5, allowing for like 1/5 of those training events would be the $6,080 over the biennium.
Okay. So the motion does contain that clarification. We're still talking about the same motion. Any further discussion from members of the committee? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Ms. Morris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next decision unit is E229. The governor recommends appropriations, general fund appropriations of $175,875 over the biennium for Executive Compliance Division, Excise Division, and Information Technology staff to attend trainings, including $20,547 for IT staff to attend 7 events, $90,251 for a total of 18 staff in the local government services unit to receive training and attend 3 conferences, including continuing education classes for 18 appraiser staff, and $54,505 for a total of 12 executive staff to attend 6 events each year, and $10,572 for 1 audit manager to attend 2 streamlined sales tax meetings each year. The agency indicated in general only 1 or 2 attendees were recommended to attend each conference, with the exception of certain events for the local government services unit, including attendance at the Western States Association Tax Administrators annual meetings, 10 staff to attend the Nevada Assessors Association conference, and recommendation for appraisal training courses for 18 staff to obtain or maintain state appraisal certificates, which would be in compliance with the State Administrative Manual, or SAM, Chapter 2629. The decision for the subcommittee on page 46. Does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of the governor's recommendation in decision unit E229 for general fund appropriations of $92,246 in fiscal year 26 and $83,629 in fiscal year 27 for IT staff, local government services unit staff, executive staff, and 1 audit manager to attend training events?
Okay, thank you, Ms. Morris. For decision unit E229, I do believe we had some additional discussions on this particular item as well. And so, Assemblymember Backus, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And consistent with what I was saying with E226, looking at E229, most of this appears to be travel related to training events. And while that is important, I'm going to suggest that we still fund it at a certain level. And I want to give the agency as much flexibility as possible with respect to this, but looking at the lower dollar items, it was easy to pick up the 2 bottom bullet items, but I still want to stress giving the agency flexibility if there's training that's appropriate for cybersecurity or other important training to be flexible with those funds. And so the total amounts are being sought over the biennium. Just, it's hard because we don't know when events fall. So the suggestion that I had was to fund E229 at $65,077 that allows attendance at a variety of events. I just don't know what years, and just want to give flexibility, and perhaps it's divided into 2 for each fiscal year.
Okay, so we have heard, and I believe that is a motion on that recommendation. So I have a motion from Assemblymember Backus. I have a second from Assemblymember Anderson. Further discussion from the committee on that motion? I think we have one point of discussion. Yep. Assemblymember Anderson, please.
Thank you. So I'm just making sure that I've got, I seconded it because I do agree with the sentiments being brought forward. I want to make sure, though, I've got it correct, that we will be recommending approval of $65,777 in fiscal year 2026 and then the same amount in fiscal year 2027, or is it a combined total of $65,777? I need a little bit more clarification around that part.
Madam Chair, the motion would be for $65,077 over the biennium.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion carries unanimously, and we will move on to the next item, E230. Ms. Morris. Oh, sorry. We're first going to go to Ms. Kaufman.
Madam Chair, just for clarification, for the purposes of closing this in full committee, fiscal staff will take the total amounts that are identified for the biennium and provide those for each of the 2 fiscal years and bring that back for the full committee's consideration.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, we will move on. Ms. Morris, back to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Decision Unit E230, which begins on page 46. The governor recommends general fund appropriations of $225,386 over the biennium for collection activities, quarterly visits, and site visits, including $111,642 for 57 trips for audit staff, $15,950 for 2 trips each for internal auditor and the information security officer to travel, and $97,794 for 38 in-state trips for revenue staff. The agency has indicated that the increase in travel would improve the agency's audit rate, and travel for the revenue staff would improve taxpayer education. The decision unit for the subcommittee on page 47. Does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of the governor's recommendation in decision unit E230 for general fund appropriations of $112,693 in each year of the 2025-27 biennium for travel related to audits and revenue collection?
Okay, thank you, Ms. Morris. I do believe this is the last discussion item that we are making a different decision on. Assemblymember Backus, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And I think right now, when looking at the totality of all the travel, this was obviously one of the most important areas, just because while things are getting tight, collection of revenue and educating our taxpayers would probably really important. So actually on this one, Madam Chair, I would actually move to recommend approval of the governor's recommendation in decision unit E234, general fund appropriations of $112,693 in each year of the 2025-27 biennium for travel related to audits and revenue collections.
Okay, great. So we do have that motion then to approve the governor's recommendation in decision unit E230, a motion from Assemblymember Backus, a second from Assemblymember Anderson. Any discussion on this motion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Ms. Morris, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are 17 other closing items for this budget account, starting on page 48. There are technical adjustments recommended to other closing items 15 and 16. And other closing items 17, budget amendment A256132361 was received on March 19th to add general fund appropriations of $351,458 in fiscal year 26 and $363,487 in fiscal year 27 for rent for the Reno office location. The decision for the subcommittee on page 49, fiscal staff recommends other closing items 1 through 14 be closed as recommended by the governor. Other closing items 15 and 16 be closed with the noted technical adjustments, and other closing items 17 be closed as recommended in Budget Amendment A256132361. Fiscal staff requests authority to make other technical adjustments as necessary.
Okay. Any discussion on these items? Seeing none, then I would accept a motion to approve these other closing items as just stated by staff.
So moved.
I have a motion from Assemblymember Anderson. I have a second from Assemblymember Backus. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. And that will then take us through the end of our decisions for today. I want to thank everyone for joining us, and thank the committee for their hard work. Thank you for letting me be here for a moment to chair, which I have not chaired a committee in a bit, so thank you for coming along the ride with me. And a special thank you to our fiscal staff, as always, for being able to pull together such great information for us to decide. That will close out our budget closings for today, and will move us to the last item that we have on our agenda, which is public comment. If you wish to give public comment either here in Carson City or down in Las Vegas, we will start in person first, and I am not seeing anybody make a beeline for those open chairs. So we will move to the phone lines. Do we have anyone wishing to give public comment today on our phone lines?
Thank you. The public lines are open and working. However, there are no callers to provide public comment at this time.
Great. We want to thank everybody for their hard work today, and we will see you in the next subcommittee. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, Chair. Nope.